Former Hillary Clinton aide Anne Marie Slaughter, and that's a very appropriate name, as you'll see in a second, gave us a little hint recently into what Hillary Clinton is going to say in the 2016 campaign on the issue of Syria, and it's not pretty. Listen.
This is the 4-week anniversary of the uprising there. We're talking about 200,000 people dead, an estimate of 9 million displaced. I know when you and I have talked in the past, you supported arming the Syrian rebels a couple years ago, not now, and you were also very strongly of the opinion that Assad's air bases should be bombed. He shouldn't have the ability to attack his own population. And you've written that, you wrote recently, why is the threat of ISIS in Iraq a sufficiently vital threat, but not the rise of ISIS in Syria? Where do you see things stand there? Apply your people-centered theory to both what we should have done and what we should be doing now.
Yeah. So, I was reading last week that the Turks are insisting on protection zones on the Turkish border as the condition for fighting ISIS the way we want them to. And I thought, it's been 3 years ago, I wrote a piece in the New York Times calling for no-kill zones, right, on exactly the same grounds, that fundamentally you had to provide the Syrian people with a place where they could be safe. At that point, of course, you didn't have Jabhat al-Nusra, you didn't have ISIS, you still largely had moderates in the Syrian opposition. You'd only had a Free Syrian Army even carrying arms for 6 months. You had a lot of opportunity. And here we are, 3 years later, 200,000 people destroyed, over half the Syrian population displaced internally or in Jordan, destabilizing the region. We will never put Syria back together again the way it has been. And on top of that, we are watching the world's cultural heritage be destroyed. So, do I know that had we done that 3 years ago, we wouldn't be where we are now? No. Absolutely not. There's no way you can say that. Maybe it would have been worse, but I'll follow Hillary Clinton. I'd rather be caught trying.
Hillary Clinton is trying again to lose the 2016 race before she even gets in it. This is the exact same mistake that she made when she was running against Obama in the last primary. Remember, she made some very hawkish comments on the issue of Iran during the primary season, and she did worse directly after it. Now, I'm not saying that that's the exact reason why she lost. She lost because of a variety of reasons, but one of the reasons she lost for sure is that she was much more hawkish than Obama on all these different issues, whether it be Iraq, Iran, or other foreign policy issues. And now she has a former top aide of hers going out there and saying, oh, I would have done the Hillary Clinton approach and gotten more involved in Syria. And she makes that argument as if, she has her finger on the pulse of the American people. And she's like, Bob in Arkansas told me he really wants us to intervene in Syria. That's absurd. That's absurd. And remember, we flip sides in this fight in Syria. I mean, that's an amazing fact that's not discussed nearly enough, if at all, in the mainstream media. We're probably the only people who have even brought that up. But remember, Obama came out, and it was, a late-night speech he gave where he spoke about how Bashar Assad, the leader of Syria, is a dictator, and he's terrible, and he's killing innocent people, and we need to bomb him, and we need to go after him. And then it was about a year later when people in Washington quietly were like, did we say go after Assad? What we really meant was attack the people who are attacking Assad. So flip sides in the civil war and go after ISIS and al-Nusra. Because, looks like they're worse than Assad. Whoops, we didn't realize. Why? Because we're America and we want to get involved in fights so quickly that we don't even bother to take a second to see what's really going on and which side is really worse. But overall, the takeaway is, we genuinely don't like both sides in this conflict. Washington hates Assad for many reasons, including the fact that he's aligned with Iran and Russia, and we don't like that. That's probably the main reason why they don't like him. So they don't like him. There's also some humanitarian issues, of course, and he has done some bad things in terms of possibly killing civilians and whatnot. But obviously we don't like the other side, which is ISIS and al-Nusra. They're jihadists. So then what do the geniuses in Washington decide to do, and what does Hillary Clinton's top aide decide to do? And Hillary Clinton herself, because she's spoken about this before, she did it on CNN once as well, weighing in on Syria policy. They say, oh, let's take the third route, which we just made up right now, which is let's find a fictional third party that fights both. As if that's gonna work. They're like, okay, so we can't go with the Sunnis, that's ISIS and al-Nusra. We can't go with the Shias because that's Assad, and we don't like him either. And there's backing from Iran if you back the Shiites. So let's go with the moderate Sunnis. Really? Who are they? Crickets. I don't hear anything. Now, you might say, Kyle, that's unfair. But it's not, because when you read the articles that I've read, and we've covered them on the show time and time again, whether there was one fantastic piece in the Daily Beast that I think it was titled The Myth of the Moderate Syrians. Because all the people who were moderate, the second that they saw what was happening to Syria, they're like, I'm out, son. They went to Turkey, they fled to Turkey, and they fled to Europe. The idea that we're going to prop up a moderate Sunni force, no, what's going to happen is, and it already did happen, the second we pledge support for a group like the FSA, who are supposedly the moderate Sunnis, what do? They did a truce with ISIS and said, all right, we're going to get backing from America now, rock and roll, that's awesome. So, hey, ISIS, let's do a truce and fight the true enemy, the evil Assad dictatorship. So we gave them weapons, or we pledged to give them weapons under the agreement that they would use it to fight ISIS. And what do? They're like, truce, ISIS? Okay, let's all go after Assad. So you're playing with fire here, man. You're playing with fire. What are you going to do? You're going to topple Assad and let a jihadist take over? Or you're going to keep Assad in power and you admit you also don't like Assad? You're just trying to pick sides in a situation that we shouldn't be in the first place. And by the way, in this interview, she goes on to say that Syria is this administration's Rwanda. An incredibly ridiculous comment. Because Rwanda, for those of you who remember, it's fairly understood at this point that it was basically a slaughter. It was basically a genocide. Whereas in Syria, yes, it's horrible and there are a lot of people dying and a lot of civilians dying. But it is a civil war. There's a difference between a genocide and a civil war, is there not? So there's not one side pure good and one side pure bad. It's much more complex than that, but she's making it seem like that's not the case. And again, I come back to the main point. This is a former Hillary Clinton top aide. Hillary obviously wants to run in 2016, and she's going to get the same old team together that's very war hawkish, and they're proving it right here.